Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Mary, and as always, I'm joined by my co host, Beth. Hey, Beth, how are you?
Hi, Mary. I'm great, thanks. Today we are joined by the incredible Rebecca Thorne, US Today, Indie, and Sunday Times best-selling author of the Tomes and Tea cozy fantasy series, and now the first book in her Titan's Wrath science fantasy trilogy, The Gilded Abyss. Rebecca's stories are known for cinematic action, witty banter, and diverse LGBTQIA plus casts, and if she can get away with it, dragons.
Rebecca, welcome to the Write Club. We're so excited to talk to you. The Gilded Abyss is a dark, thrilling shift from your cozy fantasy novels, set in a luxurious submersible with a deadly disease spreading among the passengers. This book is packed with tension, romance, and world building that's both unique and cinematic. So, can I ask you to start with where are you joining us from today?
Hi, I'm delighted to be here. I am coming in from Colorado, just north of Denver. So it is, I think it's late for you guys, but it's just like 9 a.m. for us. So
A nice time of day for you then, because it's very dark here, and I'm
yeah,
ready
it's
to get under my blanket and put my pajamas on whilst you're just ready to get out of bed.
yeah, it's kind of cloudy today, which is unusual for Colorado. It's normally very sunny
Hmm.
most days here. So it's I woke up and was like, oh, huh.
Where's the sun?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, gonna be one of those days then. So
We have the opposite problem. We don't see the sun very often.
yeah, I know. I've contemplated. I'm actually going to be applying for Slovakian citizenship to be a dual citizen, because my great grandparents left from Slovakia in the early 1900s, and they have a citizenship by descent option. So I have a meeting with the consulate in May to apply for that. So hopefully that will work.
Oh,
But yeah, I'd be a dual citizen then, and my wife and I were like, well, do we want to move to the EU for a bit? Like, we could kind of prowl around and we went and visited Germany and Switzerland and France. And I don't think I could live in any of those places, at least right now. I was surprised. This is so stupid. They charge for the bathroom.
yeah.
Like everywhere you go, they charge for the bathroom and then they charge for like tap water. So I had like my water bottle, right? Like my little emotional support, US water bottle. Like it's not like a US themed water bottle, just like it's a thing that everybody in the US has. Like we all have our emotional support water bottles.
Yeah,
I'm
don't worry,
like,
we have them too.
okay, so like I brought them and I'm like, oh, I just have my cup. If you could just fill it up with water, and they're like, that'll be $3, or 3 francs. And I'm like, huh? Like I started laughing. I thought they were joking, and I should have known that they were not joking. Like it was euros or francs anywhere we went. I was like, oh, I
That
just want
doesn't
to stay
happen in
hydrated.
that doesn't happen in England. You can get free water, but we have our own problems.
I know. Well, and you're not included in the EU, so I'm not allowed to come.
Exactly, yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be looking very seriously at Scotland, which looks very lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the UK also looks lovely, because I would love to do like The Holiday is one of my favorite movies.
Oh,
I would love to just
don't
like
like that
mimic
though.
that.
No, it's not like
I
that.
know, but I wish it was. Wouldn't that be so
Oh,
romantic?
the word.
It's okay. LA's not like that either.
We don't even get like snow here. It's pathetic. When
Hmm.
we do, it's like a bit of dust for a day, and then it turns into slush. Whereas
Yeah.
in that film, there's a lot of snow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I guess this was something I wasn't really thinking about, but it was so magical in that movie.
yeah.
The cinematography was on point. But yeah, no, LA's not like that. I mean, LA is like that, just not for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back on track to what
Sorry.
we've invited you here for to talk to us about today. I absolutely loved the book, The Gilded Abyss.
Oh,
But would you
yay.
be able to give us a bit of an overview for listeners who haven't read it yet?
Yeah, so this Gilded Abyss is a science fantasy thriller horror. It's very genre bending. So it doesn't like fit into one nice, neat little category. It's kind of a lot of things. It follows a soldier in a very military driven society, who is just trying to keep her head down and like do her job. And then her ex comes into the picture, and she is a royal who is now in need of a bodyguard, while they go on this submarine to this underwater city. So she basically recruits her ex to be her bodyguard and then pulls her onto this very luxury Titanic like submarine that they go down into the ocean for to try and investigate a murder that happened in the underwater city of Fall. And Fall is this basically like domed city. So it's like underneath a big dome and there's a bunch of air and stuff. Um, and it was very hard to write this book because it's very I wanted to base it off of like 1920s Gilded Age kind of vibe, hence the name This Gilded Abyss, where it's like not all that glimmers is gold kind of thing. So in this society, there's this very like super powered material called Icaron, and it is basically enhancing everything that it is put into. So they put it on like windows to make them stronger. They put it in medicine to make it more effective. They put it in bandages so that your wound heals faster. They put it in bullets so that it can pierce through things faster. So there's a lot of like implications in society around this material, but it's all mined down under the ocean at this underwater city. So when they go down there, it's actually like this whole kind of eco-political movement, I guess, down there where they're trying to figure out like why there are murders happening in the mines, which are basically the source of their economic prosperity. So it's very detailed, it's very intense. Chaos breaks out on the submarine. I always say that it's basically the pitch of it is lesbians descending into a Titanic-like submarine during a zombie apocalypse. Because that's basically what happens on the submarine. It's like they get in there and then just like all hell breaks loose, and they're trapped under the ocean. So if you have, I think it's thalassophobia, the fear of deep ocean water, probably not the book for you.
Yeah, I was actually really looking forward to asking you that question because I had absolutely no idea how you were going to try and give us an overview or how you were going to explain it to somebody who hadn't read it. Because, like you say, there was just so much in it that I thought there is absolutely no way she's going to be able to tell us exactly what happens without spoiling it or I don't know,
It's
making it
quite
sound
a
too
lot.
confusing. But because when you're reading it, it's not confusing, but it flows so well. But there is just so much going
I
on.
think that the big thing about that book was like, if you think you know what's going on, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing I was trying to drive home. So every time you think you understand why a character is doing something or what is happening in the world, no, you don't.
Mhm.
And I loved those twists and turns. So it is hard to describe once you've read the whole book because it's like, well, how like how do you encompass everything that happens in the last 50 pages to
Yeah.
someone who is just getting started because you can't, you know? So it's been tricky to find the right marketing vibe for this book. And what I've noticed is I have this book and another book that are very much like that, where it's like they're not simple concepts, they're very complex. And when you try to explain them, like they work really well in the narrative, but when you're trying to pitch them to a wider audience, it's really hard to get readers because they're not easy to summarize. Like they're not easy to explain. And I love books like that when I find them, but you don't find them very often because they're not easy to explain. So like you walk past so many of those great books without even realizing what's inside them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean,
Mhm.
I think you did a great job of
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
So,
I always say that if anyone was a fan of the old video game BioShock, which was from the early 2000s, and it was like this underwater city called Rapture, and you go into this underwater city and you're just like basically fighting zombies the whole time. Like that is literally what this book is,
yeah.
coupled with the characters from Arcane. So I always say if you liked the TV show Arcane or the video game BioShock, or if you're interested at all in the Titanic, because I did a lot of research on the Titanic and added a lot of stuff. Like I spent ages researching how people on the Titanic went to the bathroom. Like like things that I never thought I would have to research, but I was like, well, what did they do? Like, were there toilets? And the answer is there were. Only on the floors though. They only had like 3 or 4 toilets per floor. And then they had chamber pots inside every room. And they had somebody who came over and emptied the chamber pot for
Mm.
every room
I
all the
Well, there
didn't.
you
time.
go. I never knew I needed
Yeah.
to know that, but I did.
I know. I literally was just like, well, this is something. I was like, I'm like, they had interior plumbing. They must have had some kind of like toilet system. But I was like, but that seems like kind of excessive. That's like more of a modern day, like a toilet in your room kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so they had like if you were out and about on the ship, they had toilets available for you. But if you were in your room, you used a chamber pot.
Fascinating. And it, like you've mentioned, it's quite a massive tonal shift from the Tones and Tea series, which is, I
Yes.
think, must be the understatement of the year.
Mhm.
How did you decide to move from cozy fantasy to this dark science fantasy?
Well, so I'm going to be very honest, and I say this a lot, and people are always like, "No, no." The world building in the Tums and Tea series is very bland. It's very basic. It's bad. It's just bad. Like I mean, like, and everyone's like, no, it's so great, it's so creative. I'm like, no, no, there's a capital city called the capital. Like, the name of the country is called the Queendom. There is a magic city that they practice magic in called the Magicary. And then Shapara, I literally looked at my shepherd on the ground and was like, yeah, that's a good name for a country. Let's just name it Shapara because my shepherd is right there. Yeah, no, like the world building was just not. I wrote it to be very quick. I wrote it quickly over in 2022, the first book in that series, because I saw a trend coming and I wanted to see if I could get on top of it. And so I wrote that book very quickly. I kept it very basic. And I will say, I think that was very helpful for a lot of people because there's a lot of non-fantasy readers who pick up that book series and do just fine because it's not intense world building. It's very similar to what we have today with slightly different names, right? So the barrier to entry is very low for that book. But after I wrote two of those books in that series, I was kind of ready for something more intense. And I wanted to prove to the readers that I had magically acquired with that series that, like, that was not the best world building I could do. So I wrote this a little bit out of like spite and a little bit out of like desperation because I got to a point with the cozies where I was like, I just need to stab somebody. I just need to stab somebody. There needs to be some kind of blood. And I can't make it cozy in the end. I don't want it to be cozy. So this book was like a compilation of all of the non-cozy feelings I'd been amassing for two different novels that I couldn't put in the Tomes and Tea series, but like wanted to. And so I went back in and added them all into this book instead. This book was actually the thesis project for my master's degree. So I
Oh,
actually ended up submitting it as my thesis at the very
oh
end of that
wow.
semester.
Oh, that's so
Amazing.
interesting.
And I did see actually at the front of the book that you put that it was it self-published first and then it got picked up and it was actually when you first wrote it was finished like a week before or a week after that submarine that imploded.
Yeah, yeah. It was published 15 days before Ocean Gate.
Wow.
Yeah, so Ocean Gate happened and it went massively viral all over, TikTok. And of course, I'm on TikTok, so I was like, okay, so I posted a couple videos about that and how like weirdly timed it was. And I got a lot of sales from that, which was great, which is also good too, because I think my cozy audiences were hesitant to try something like this. I think that was like in the period of the beginning of cozy when everyone's like, we want the cozy stories. So I know a lot of cozy readers pretty much only read cozy for like a couple years. And now we're getting back, now that it's been re-released, we're getting back to this point where a lot of the cozy readers are a little filled up on cozy and they're ready to go to something a little more dramatic, a little more intense, a little more of a reflection of our society today, I think. So this book fills that very nicely for them. So yeah, I mean, this is just kind of how publishing works, like we write these books years and years before they're ever seen by the world if they're in traditional publishing. And I was lucky that I had it self-published and it sold consistently well, self-publishing. Not nearly as well as my cozy fantasies, but very consistently it was selling. And then my publisher was like, yeah, we think this is great. And I was like, well, Tor publishes Gideon the Ninth, which was another comp of mine for this book. And so I kind of was like, if you want it, like Tor's probably the only publisher that I'd be okay handing it to.
Oh, and how did you come up for the idea? The underwater setting and the virus. Where did those ideas originate for? Were there any real life or fictional inspirations? You did mention the computer game there. Was that something that you were really into and fed into it, or?
Yeah, so the computer game BioShock, if anyone's ever played it, it kind of gets into your soul and it doesn't really leave. Like I played that game in like 2003 and like I'm still thinking about it 23 years later, like or 2005, like I'm still thinking about it decades later. I feel like the world that they created in that underwater city called Rapture is so vivid and so beautiful and it's very Gilded Age. It's very like 1920s, 19 well, and technically it's the 1940s technology in that video game. And then the character finds it in the 1960s. So like 20 years after everything went to shit. Or 1970s, something like that. But it's like it's very like vivid. Like you walk through that video game and there's like these big tall hallways that are just like gold on either side. It's like these gold columns, and there's all these posters of like propaganda basically that is like, oh, like find yourself in the depths, and like things like that where it's like there's like every detail in that city is so well laid out that you're just like, oh my God. And then because you're trapped under the ocean and there's no escape, you're kind of sitting here with this like consistently intense fear of like, I'm never going to get out of this. And then you start to see the bloodstains in that video game. And you're like, so you walk down a hallway and you just find like one of those old like morgues, right? Like a moratorium kind of thing. And it's like the black and white tiles with like the crisp medical equipment and then just like the blood smeared on the walls and the visuals of it never left my mind. Like I think about that city all the time. So it was almost like me paying homage to that city. Like I've always been fascinated with like the Titanic and like this like because cruise ships today aren't really glamorous, like they're big, they're impressive, but they're not like glamour the way that I think we think of the Titanic. And I feel like that also stuck in my mind. So I kind of combined a lot of these like elements together into something that felt very interesting and unique for me. And I had a lot of fun with it. I haven't gotten to write a fantasy where I based it in real world technology. It's always like magic, right? But this was a really interesting exercise to try and base it in like 1920s technology. I got to research like, well, what kind of like videography did they have? Like, did they have like what did their cameras look like? How about like loudspeakers? Like, let's talk about like how did that work out, right? Like, how was their construction back then versus now? And it was really kind of fun to analyze.
Do you really enjoy that research part?
I do, depending on the topic. I think that when I start writing, I don't enjoy cutting my writing up to research to so like when it's like the pre-research where like the pre-writing research where I'm like, oh, I get to just like immerse myself in this whole new area. Wow, I didn't know any of this. That's really fun. But if I'm deep into the throes of writing and I have to fact check something, that research kind of annoys me. I'm just like, I could be writing right now, but like of course I have to stop and then my
Take you out of it.
ADHD goes on a tangent, and then I have a hard time getting back to the writing because I'm just like scrolling through 18,000 web pages that aren't even related to what I was looking up.
Yeah, end up down a massive rabbit hole. I do the exact
Hmm.
thing all the time.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Like it's quite bad.
So when you're writing in about this high stakes kind of dangerous setting, how do you keep the romance and the tension alive? How do you balance
Well,
those things?
so these characters, like when I was writing my cozy fantasy series, I knew I wanted characters that were like genuinely in love with each other from start to finish, and they were always going to be supportive of each other. They have healthy communication, like therapy level communication, which was something I wanted to see in a book because I don't feel like I ever saw it. Like it's always the miscommunication trope. It's always like, oh, they're good, but like they're not like really talking about anything important. I feel like I always saw relationships start and then get to happily ever after and then stop.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was very annoying for me because I wanted to see what happened after happily ever after. Like, how does a couple move in together? How do they decide to get married? How do they decide that they're ready for children? How does that work? And with Gilded Abyss, it was opposite of that because I wrote this really healthy relationship. And then I kind of wanted to show how, like, even with good communication, sometimes you're just not allowed to say everything. Like there's a character named Cassandra in this Gilded Abyss who is very secretive, but she has to be secretive to protect people's lives. So, like, because she's a royal and she knows what's happening behind the curtain in like the royalty of this world, she can't say things out loud because there are very powerful people waiting for her to slip up and murder the people around her for that. So she has secrets, but it never felt like the miscommunication trope to me because she physically has a reason why she can't. Like that's why I never delved into her personality, like point of view when I was writing that book. Like I never looked at Cassandra's point of view because I couldn't get inside her head as a writer because it would reveal too much to the reader at that point. So the first book is all from Nyx's point of view, the soldier character. And I think that it was really fun to write them. And as I'm writing book two and kind of planning book three, it's been consistently fun to write them because they're very passionate in a way that I think Keanth and Reyna are not. Like my other two characters in the cozies, they're passionate, but they're like that kind of like fun best friend kind of like, oh, sometimes there's passion, but mostly they're just comfortable with each other. Nyx and Cassandra were held apart for years and years and years, and they had like this burning passion below where they never stopped thinking about each other in like one way or another over years. So when they finally get back together, there's like this fantastic chemistry clash that was able to be pulled through this book, even with all the chaos that's happening behind the scenes. They are still finally just like, wow, we get to be kind of like near each other. And what's that look like, right? Like, and it's very enemies to lovers in that way. So it was a lot of fun to write them. They're very toxic to each other. I always say, I'm like, if you want a good relationship, look at Keith and Raina. If you want like a more messy kind of real relationship, look at Cassandra and Nyx because they're not ideal.
Yeah, they're on a bit of a roller coaster, bless them, aren't they?
Yeah, little bit. Yeah, the next book doesn't get better. It's chaos.
Oh, I can't wait to read that when it comes out because I feel like the way that it's ended as well, the first book, without giving out any spoilers, it just makes you wanna.
Yeah, it's definitely for anyone listening, it's the start of a trilogy and it ends with a cliffhanger. So brace yourself, and if you're one of those people that doesn't want to see cliffhangers, you may want to wait a couple years until the other two books are out.
Yeah, read them all in one go.
Yeah, read them all in one go.
Yeah, because now I'm gonna have to sit and wait.
Yeah. Well, and I feel bad for the people who read the indie version back in 2023
Oh,
because like
yeah.
I was supposed to release the second book last December, not 2025, but 2024 was when I was planning on self-publishing that book. And I'm actually glad that I didn't because there was a lot of intricacies in writing a sequel that I wasn't expecting. Like this is going to sound stupid for someone who writes as much as me, but this is the first like true follow-up sequel I've ever written. In the cozy fantasy series, they're episodic. Like so, like they take take place 6 months apart with the same set of characters, so they feel like standalone books to me, even though like they follow a wider thread. This book takes place like the second book takes place like 5 minutes after the first book ends, and so I have to keep going with this story, but then I also still have to get the plot beats of each individual book right. And that's something I've never written before because I would never waste my time writing a sequel until I knew the first book had sold. And so that was just something that like as a younger writer, it was like, well, I can't sell a sequel until I sell the first book. And if I try to submit the first book to a publisher and they don't want it, there's no point in me wasting time writing this sequel. I could be writing a new book that might also get sold to a publisher. So this is the first book that a sequel was necessary and valid for me in my brain to write. And it is hard. Like I was not expecting it to be so difficult to like keep the canon straight. And there's so much intricacy here that like I can't remember, like, for example, like did she have a sword or did she not have a sword in this chapter? Like where did she put the sword? And then I have to go back 5 chapters to find out where she like one sentence where she sets the sword down and then walks away from it. Like it's taken so much extra research into my own books to find out like all of the intricacies of that and then to still craft a compelling narrative on top of it. It's a lot. I was surprised.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult.
It was very hard. I feel like I'm madly impressed with the authors who just do this on the regular. Like they just bang out trilogies on the regular. I'm just like, I think this honestly might be the last trilogy I write for a very long time.
Yeah, give yourself a break afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I expected it to be easier and it's just not. And it's hard too because like the first book I really loved a lot and I want the second book to hold up and it has to have some twists and turns as well, but I already kind of laid out most of the stuff in the society in book one, so it's like if everybody knows 90% of how this world functions, how do I have twists and turns in book two? So that's been a really tricky thing to kind of figure out as well. So
Yeah.
early feedback is in and people are liking it, but there's definitely more editing that I think needs to be done before we can like officially like I submitted it to my editor last week and I was hoping that it'd be done and then I started getting feedback from the beta readers and I'm just like I think we got to go back for one more round. So
So when are you hoping to get that out then?
it's supposed to come out in October of 2026. So right now it's scheduled for October 13th. I think we'll meet that deadline, but it'll depend on how this next round of edits go.
Ooh, exciting. I'll put that date in my calendar.
Yeah.
I'll be dropping you an email on the 12th to say,
Yeah, it'll be right before Halloween, so that's like the perfect timing for this.
yeah,
This like creepy
absolutely.
underwater, because the first book is on the submarine, the second book is in fall. So it takes place
Wow,
entirely in the underwater city.
I can't wait. Um, and did you always want to be a writer, or has your path kind of developed differently over time?
I have wanted to be a writer since I was 11 years old. I did not pursue writing in college, and I did not get a job in it ever. But I was writing all the time on my free time. I remember when I was like 18 trying to pick a major, and I was like, I'll do creative writing. And my dad was just like, nope. He's like, we're not sending you to college for that. Like, he's like, you already write. We're not sending you to college for that. He said, you're going to get a degree you can get a job in. And I laughed because I then went for criminal justice and then decided that was not the path I wanted to take. And boy, I'm glad about that. But But I got my degree in criminal justice and then I became a flight attendant out of college.
Oh,
So that is
Wow.
actually my day job.
Oh, right,
very
you're still
nice.
doing that. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, I'm still employed. I don't fly very often, but my job is pretty flexible, so they kind of let us choose our schedule. Like they give us a schedule and we can work it or not.
Hmm.
That
So
sounds
yeah, if
great.
we
Sounds
if we
perfect.
decide we don't want to work it, we just give it off to other flight attendants who do want to work them. So
Oh,
as long as our trips are covered, they don't really care.
that's
Oh.
great. So much time
Mhm.
for writing.
Yeah, lots of time for writing. It was great even when I was working full time because I would just bring my laptop and write on the plane. Like you do a long flight and there's eventually a period where the passengers are like, stop asking me questions, leave me alone to watch my movie, right? So that I go back into my back alley and I just be a little writing. And then I get to the hotel rooms and there's nothing to do there. Like sometimes I'd go out and do fun things in the cities, but after 12 years of it, it's like,
You've
done
seen
most of the things in
everything.
most of the cities.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
That's a nice problem to have, though, I will admit.
it was. Yeah, I'm actually only 2 states away from hitting all 50.
No
So I'm
way.
gonna be, yeah, my wife and I think are gonna take a road trip to the Dakotas. Those are the only ones I'm missing now.
Oh,
So
cool. That's
yeah.
pretty impressive. So when you were doing, when you were flying around, were you doing mostly within the US or?
Yeah, so I work for Southwest, and they are pretty exclusively in the US right now, although there are murmurings that we're going to start going to Europe. So we'll see, but we need bigger planes if they're going to do that. And we don't have any pilots who can fly those planes. So unless we do a merger where we find an airline that has both pilots, flight attendants certified on that plane and the bigger planes, I don't know how Europe would be a possibility right now. There's a lot of like technical stuff that goes on in the background of airlines when they're trying to get approval to go abroad. So we'll have to see how that ends up working. But I mean, yeah, they're everywhere in the US. It's been really fun to kind of explore, and the US is so varied, people wise, geographically,
Mhm.
demographically. It's a very cool place to work. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you must see so many people that you can then put into your writing as well, all those
So
character
much
studies.
inspiration. Yeah, I absolutely, I think that that's part of the reason why my characters always feel pretty real. It's because I spent 12 years watching people on the plane, like being people,
Yeah.
like because I'm talking to people all the time, I have a very intimate understanding of how people handle conflict, how people handle stress, how people find humor, in certain situations. Like it's a snapshot, but it's like a very comprehensive snapshot of people.
Oh, wow. So now that you're not flying around as much, what does a typical writing day look like for you, if there is such a thing?
I've been trying to find a regular routine for ages. I have pretty complex ADHD. It's like inattentive and hyperactive together. And so like I do best under intense deadlines and I do best like banging it out in like, you know, 30 days, right? Like I can bang out a novel in like 30 days and it's a terrible 30 days. But then I take like 3 months off and I'm like, ugh, like but I've been trying to find a more sustainable way to do this because I don't like those deadline months where it's like, and that's been really hard too because I get so distracted day to day that I'm just so like for example today I was like, oh, I'll write 2 or 3 thousand words today and that'll be great. What a good progress. But then I have, like a podcast in the morning. I've got a doctor's appointment at noon and then I've got a workout and then we've got a drywall guy coming to give us a quote. And like all those things interrupt me to the point where I can't get back to what I
Mm.
was already doing. So I think what I really need is like a separate space that is not inside my house. And I'm looking into that this year is to potentially find some kind of like when I go there, all I'm doing is writing for 6 hours. And the only thing I have to do that day is get myself to that location and focus for 6 hours. Um, so we'll see. The writing schedule has not really been a thing despite my best efforts. I'm just not used to that. Like thinking about my schedule as a flight attendant, like 3 days on, 4 days off. I'd fly for 3 days and I'd write whenever I had a free moment on those. And then I come home for 4 days and I'd write at home and I treat it like a second job. But like then I go back to flying for 3 days. So like that schedule I learned how to work with very well. And now that it's just me existing, like I really should just start flying again because I feel like I might have a better
Sometimes it
chance.
sometimes it is easier the more pressures you
The
have on
more
your
you work.
time, isn't
Yeah.
it?
They always say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah.
Mm,
Hmm.
they'll fit it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. For writers struggling with beginnings, what would be your advice for tackling that first blank page?
Ooh, the first blank page is so intimidating, for experienced authors and amateurs alike. I feel like once you get past that, you're good. I always try to remember intimately that like I can't edit something that's not on page. But like kind of in the same way that like most artists are able to kind of tweak their art, I read this other quote today or last night that said something like if you're in a sport, you get three strikes and you're out. But in writing, you can edit over and over and over and over and over. Like there's no strikes. Like you can just keep going until it's what you want. And I think that that's the most important thing to remember with the blank page. Like it doesn't matter what you're putting on for the beginning. It's the first draft. Just get it down. And then you can go back and be like, was this the right place to start? Are these characters being introduced the way I want to? Learn the craft of it and then learn how to break the rules. Because if you don't know what you're expected to write on the first page, you're not going to have any idea going forward. But always remember that editing it's going to be there regardless. So like you're never going to get it perfect on moment one.
Yeah, you need something to edit first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good advice.
What books have inspired you recently, and what would you recommend to our listeners?
Um, so I'm this is the best part of my job, but it's also the bougiest part of my job. I get advanced reader copies from authors that like I shouldn't even have a copy of their book, but they send me early copies. So like I got like the new Murder Bot and they sent it to me like 4 months before it was supposed to be published. And I'm just like, and I think it's coming out in March. So like I read it in like a day and a half. It was so good. So Martha Wells, like her new book is incredible. And then they actually just sent me Becky Chambers's new book as well. And I am so freaking excited. It is so good. I'm not going to say anything about it, but like place your pre-orders now because it's amazing. It's like I mean Becky Chambers is just amazing anyway, but like it's so good. I'm like I'm not even very far. I'm like 20% in and I'm just like this is easily one of the best books. I think this will be my favorite read this year.
Oh,
Other
wow.
than maybe unless another murder bot comes out because those just always rise right to the top. But I feel like between the two, like they're so good. Yeah, anything by Becky Chambers, anything by Martha Wells. I actually have just read Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I've been diving into that too. I met Matt Dinneman at the Columbus Festival of Books over the summer, and he's like the nicest guy and like so encouraging. And I just am like, I'm blown away by the stuff he's putting into this book. Like it started out where I was like, oh, I don't really know. Like there's a scene like 90 pages in to the first book that like literally almost made me leave the book on a plane. It was a signed copy and I literally almost folded it up and left it in the seat back pocket because it was so bad. Like it was horrific, but that's the point. Like the point of that scene is that it like makes you feel like you are so uncomfortable that you can't breathe, and then you keep going and you get to watch like the character realize how fucked up that was and it's just so good. And I feel bad because like I know there's a lot of people who get to that scene and are like, I can't read this anymore. And they put the book down. And I actually think that's a damn tragedy because it is genuinely, there's so much in that book series that they are identifying about our world. Like, I mean, like he tackles like social media impact and how like, like one of the characters is like obsessed with the views and like does stupid things for likes, like the stuff that like that he's adding into this series in such a creative way. I'm just like, so yeah, I'm 3 books into that series and I'm taking my time with it. I'm enjoying the fact that like there's so many more and I can really just kind of sink my teeth into one at a time. So,
Very nice.
mhm.
Great recommendations. And I know you have given us a little bit of a insight into what you're working on at the minute. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser as to what we can expect in the trilogy and what we can be looking forward to?
Yeah, so the trilogy is moving forward at a pretty good pace. The second book is taking place entirely in fall, and it's going to be the book where we get to watch Cassandra break because she's pretty like Ice Queen in book one. She kind of nothing really phases her. She's just kind of she keeps her cool most of the time. So I really wanted to break that down in book two. So that's a lot of fun. There's some twists, there's some turns that even the characters didn't expect. And that book comes out in October. I think it should come out in October. And then the other book that I'm like super stoked for is it's another cozy by me. So it's completely different from Gilded Abyss. But it is a cozy science fiction. And that genre is like not a thing. It's like not a thing. So like if you go into a store, you'll find a cozy fantasy section in the Barnes and Noble, but you will not find a cozy sci-fi section. And it's because there aren't enough of them because there's only like 4, right? And most of them were published before cozy sci-fi could have been its own genre. So they weren't called cozy sci-fi, they're just sci-fi. So like Becky Chambers is a great example of that. And I would argue Murderbot is too, actually. It doesn't, Murderbot shouldn't be cozy, but it feels very cozy to me because of the found family. So this book is intentionally a cozy sci-fi. It's like, I think it's, to my knowledge, one of the first that is going to be published that is like aiming for that genre. And it is about a girl who buys a spaceship covered in moss, and she finds out when she leaves the space station that the moss is both sentient and has severe abandonment issues. And then the alien who created the moss computer ends up finding them and is like, hey, that's my ship. And the moss had been abandoned for 100 years by this alien and was like, the fuck it is, you know? So like, so the moss is like this great character, like literally just like organic moss just all over the ship, and it has opinions about everything. And then the main character is trying to save her sister by finding a place that she can breathe easier because she's, you know, the recycled air on the space station is not good for her sister's health. Her sister's a bitch, so like that's really fun. Like her sister's a doctor with terrible bedside manner. And then there's like a very slow burn sapphic love story that will probably take place over 3 books. So
That
Wow.
sounds like so much fun.
It
it's going to
really
be
does.
so much fun. It's very like humor based. Like I was rereading it and I wrote it and I was laughing out loud. Like the Moss character is so the Moss says everything that we wish we could say, but like with more confidence because it has data to back it up. So like it's been like watching humans for 100 years and it knows everything about humans. So it thinks, you know, and then it ends up meeting this main character and it's just like, you will help me get revenge on the alien that abandoned me. She's just like, what? It's a
I
lot of
love it.
fun.
That's
So that
so
one comes
wild.
out. I'm like so excited. It's called, oh, and here's the thing. Okay, so I had to fight for this title. The title of the book is called Mossed in Space.
Oh,
Oh,
amazing.
And I'm so excited. Yeah, we went back and forth on titles for months and months and months with this publisher because like they, you know, it's hard to find a book like a title that really encompasses what the book is. And I came up with Lost in Space initially, and they were like, we think it's a little, you know, like a little, and it was so funny. Like at one point they were just like, well, you know, the reason people like your Tomes and Tea series is because they have the word tea in the titles of each of the books. So we need to come up with a cozy beverage that Moss has. And I was like, people like my Tomes and Tea series titles because they're puns. Like,
mm.
like they're funny, you know, like that's why people like my titles for the tome. I'm like, so I had to like explain to this massive multi-million dollar publisher. Like, no. Anyway, Lost in Space is coming out in July, July 7th, 2026. And I am delighted. I cannot wait for you guys to read it. It's going to be so good.
I'm
Oh,
really excited about that one.
I
Definitely.
am so
please
excited.
don't.
And if there's anybody listening who's like even mildly interested, please place a pre-order because that is how publishers determine whether or not there's going to be an audience for a book and how much marketing that book subsequently gets. If we can make Moss very big, I really do think that we're going to see a genuine cozy sci-fi genre pop up. Like the way that cozy, like if Moss can be huge, I think that we can see cozy sci-fi becoming a staple and then we get more of it. And I want more of it. But like if it flops, all the publishers are going to point to it and be like, oh, you know, like
That's
it's
great, though.
just
I'm sure
it's
I bet we've got people listening who would love to try their hand at that genre as well, so they can really get behind it.
yeah,
And
truly. Like I'm like I want more books in that genre, but right now every publisher I've talked to is just like, yeah, sci-fi just and cozy sci-fi won't. And I'm like, have you talked to any cozy readers? Because all of them are asking me for this. Like all of them want the like hope core solar punk cozy books in space. Like I feel like that's the thing that most people want, but yeah, I don't know. Pitching it has been very hard. It's been a very uphill climb with this genre.
yeah.
So
But how exciting to be at the beginning of a new genre. I love that. It's exciting.
I'm hoping that it can take off. I would really love to help make this an actual standout genre because I want more. You know, like God, I would love to read so many cozy sci-fi books. I'd be so happy.
Well, I guess you get to be the guinea pig for it then.
Yeah, we'll
See how
see.
you
There's
do.
a couple others that have come out that I'm like hopeful of. Like Becky Chambers is consistently selling, and this book that I'm reading right now, I don't know if it's I wouldn't say it's cozy, but it's, you know, Becky Chambers' writing style is always inherently comfort based. So like there is like some really great, you know, found family and stuff in it. And then that book Automatic Noodle came out, and that one's about a robot who starts a noodle shop, I think. I haven't read that one yet. It's been on my list forever, and like I met the author and she's amazing. So like I'm hoping to get that book on my TBR here soon. But yeah, there are some that are popping up, and I'm just like, so I'll be one more. But like the more we get that are successful, the better the chance that it's gonna actually sell. So
Oh,
And
that's
we don't
brilliant.
have to wait as long for this one as
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, this one's coming out in, 6 months, I guess. So pretty soon.
very exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. And thank you so much for joining us on the Right Club, Rebecca. And the Gilded Abyss is on sale now for our listeners, and we definitely recommend it.
Thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it.